Welcome to Rauta, welcome to the Steelfest 2023, and this time I have a band which has a peculiar name. Let's talk about it in a minute, but first, let's introduce our man of the hour.
Yes.
Who are you and why on earth are you doing this interview with us?
I'm Don from Nunslaughter, and you asked me to.
Now, you go by Dawn of the Dead, and that's a kind of a nice eye wink towards the movies.
The movie, yeah.
And you're also known for having humor on stage. Who on earth wants to do humorous extreme metal? Why are you guys doing that?
Well, a lot of that was actually from our drummer who passed away, Jim Sadis. He had a very good sense of humor. He was really quick. But before we started doing live shows, we talked about what we were going to do for a live show, and we thought it was a good idea. One of the big influences was Cam Lee from Massacre. On all the old live show tapes that I had at Massacre, he would always make humorous comments in between songs, and I thought that was a good approach. So I'm just mimicking, Massacre or Cam Lee, because it's one of my favorite underground singers. So that's
something I want to talk later on about. But first, I wanted to tackle this name. We were actually discussing today with my pals, like a good friend of mine who was asking, so is Nonslaughter a place where a massive amount of murders happen? And I'm like, are you sure it's not about Nonslaughter? So which one is it?
It's definitely Nunslaughter, and how that band name came up was me and the other two guys that formed the band. We really liked. So a lot of the good names were already taken at the time. So like Autopsy and
Massacre,
Death and Massacre, Obituary, all these names were taken.
All the obvious ones.
Yeah, the obvious ones. So we really liked the band name Morbid Angel, because it kind of took two words that shouldn't really go together.
Yeah.
They put them together, and it sounded it's a fucking great.
It's fucking great name.
Great name, yeah. So we started just going around, the three of us throwing out two words that didn't anything to do with like Satan or the Catholic Church and this kind of stuff, and then we never remembered who said it first, but somebody said Nunslaughter, and we all kind of stopped laughing, and we were like,
yeah, that's Nunslaughter.
Yeah, that's actually pretty good. So we decided that's the name of the band. So.
Did you ever meet any nuns in real life?
Yeah, actually, I've got quite a few pictures of me, especially in the airport or touring Gothic churches or cathedrals. There's nuns there, and a lot of times I was like, "Can I take a picture with you?" They're nice.
That kind of emphasizes the joke.
Yeah.
Do you ever explain what's going on? I'm taking this picture because
not to the actual nuns, but to around Halloween, if there's a girl dressed up like a nun, I explained to her, I said, I'm in this band, can I take a picture with you? And they usually say, yeah, they don't know, they never heard of the band, but they just think it's kind of funny that somebody wants a picture with them. So,
have you ever got into trouble because of such a high-nosed name?
Well, not into trouble, but the name a lot of times gets changed on a marquee or outside of the venue. It's been Sunslaughter, it's been None Slaughter, Nslaughter, Sunslaughter. Yeah, so a bunch of different ways they're trying to get around just saying Nunslaughter, but yeah, never got in any trouble like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
What made you go into sort of humorous extreme metal to begin with? I mean, most bands, even if they're death metal or thrash metal, black metal, always kind of have a serious tone, and sometimes it almost feels like laughing is forbidden when you're doing extreme metal, even though we know in reality we're a bunch of, good-spirited guys doing metal and stuff, but you wanted to, let's just break the rules and do differently.
Well, I wouldn't say that it's humorous. I'd say it's some of it's tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah, that's what I mean, not like a joke, but kind of like a darker sense of humor. And
but it actually goes back to Massacre. I just thought that Cam Lee delivered it very well on stage, and the previous drummer Jim and I, we have a good sense of humor. We just decided to incorporate it into music. Although he wasn't in the band when the band started, he didn't join until I think '95. but back in '87, we weren't doing any live shows back then, but we all had pretty good sense of humor. So, yeah, I think it goes well and arm in arm, and it goes well on stage. So,
Definitely, I've seen you play, and I remember it so well because it was one of those shows that actually made me smile a lot. I'm usually this kind of a very dull Finnish rock police mentality, usually. I'm enjoying.
There's a lot of that.
Yeah. like a fucking guard. And there I'm smiling at this show, like my friends, like, what the fuck? These guys have so good mood. It's like contagious.
Oh, good.
And you're like,
I'm glad.
It's almost like you don't really give a fuck, like either way. But how things have changed throughout the decades you have been doing music, because obviously it's not the same now that you're almost 100 years old and all that shit. And all that stuff. But you know what I mean? You've been around for a long time. So
36 years this year, yeah.
So how things have changed in your opinion doing the music?
I think it's, especially with, the internet and being able to communicate with people all around the world instantaneously. I think it makes it easier for shows, getting on tours, doing fests, because you can communicate super fast, and and of course people can download your music. We meet people in the airport, and inevitably somebody's like, "You guys in a band?" We say, "Yeah." Tell them the name, and then by the time we're up at the, getting on the airplane, they're watching Nunslaughter videos on their phone, and so that's changed it a lot.
Yeah.
Whereas before, you tell somebody your name and they forget it, or they're totally offended, or whatever. So, but yeah, I think that's what's really changed in the underground the most that I can see.
Now, America is of course known for a lot of bands, big music industry, and you have a lot of places where to gig and all that stuff. How different is, from your perspective, playing in, say, Europe or Asia versus United States? How's the culture difference?
Actually, I think people in Europe seem to enjoy music a lot more, and there's people in the United States don't seem to cross lines as much. Like if you listen to this type of metal, you can't listen to this type of metal, or you can't listen to punk, you can't like pop rock, or
so it's more like boxed.
It's very boxed, in my opinion. But here in Europe, you see a lot of people that are either just into extreme music or into the idea of the underground music. So they'll listen to the Ramones as much as they might listen to Carpathian Forest or Motorhead, and they're going to listen to some grind band, Inferior or something like that. So. I think that's the biggest difference that I see, between Europe and the United States.
Now, before the interview, I mentioned that we might go into some, more serious topics and all that stuff. And one thing I've learned throughout the decades, which has changed, is like nowadays seems like everything is way more political. Personally, I don't like that one bit, but I guess I kind of have to suffer through. But I mean, like, people are like, if you play there, you cannot play that place. If you do tours with that and that band, then you cannot go with us and all that stuff. And it seems it's even more American, like dividing people into left and right or whatever, black and white. What's your opinion about this?
Well, I mean,
political thing in metal.
I think it's pretty fucking stupid. I mean, I think especially in the United States, there's the idea of this whole cancel culture, and it's all music, it's all entertainment. It's just like a television show. If you don't like it, just change the channel. You don't have to listen to it to know that it exists, or to allow it to exist, or you don't have to approve of it to allow it to exist. It's just out there. So we do splits with all kinds of, we do black metal bands and grind bands and death metal bands and heavy metal. And they all, I never asked their political views or anything like that. I just like their music, so we just put out a split 7-inch with them, or a split tape or something like that.
This is what you're mostly known for, not for so much as albums, I think, but a lot of those mini releases, splits and whatnot. Why did you decide to go with that direction or style?
I'm not really sure how it started. Jim was a big fan of putting out releases, and once the ball started rolling, I saw that we could keep putting out more and more releases. So it was rehearsals and live tapes, and a lot of them sounded like shit, but I just like the idea of putting out releases. They're all limited 20 to maybe 100 copies, a lot of them. But then, Jim and I were kind of obsessed with putting out 7 inches, so we just started focusing on putting out.
So it's all
vinyl.
about like old school vinyl stuff, and it's cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great too, because the band gets, you're united with another band from on the other side of the world, you know, and that's for all time.
So it's just more like a camaraderie in a way.
I think so. Well, when we first started off, you know, we were doing splits with people that we were friends have a band and we have a band, so we put it out. But then you kind of notice that, you know, it's shared, because the people that might listen to that band never heard of Nunslaughter, and the people that listen to Nunslaughter might not have heard of this other band. So when you put out a split, you say, hey, we're doing a record with this band, and they're like, oh, it's some grind band from on the other side of the world, and then people get to hear them. They might like it or not, but that's for them to decide, you know.
So it's kind of like an underground marketing tactics in a way.
I guess marketing, or a way to
Promote
the band, and you know, if Nunslaughter or something that Nunslaughter's done can help elevate another band, and vice versa, I think that's a good idea. That's the whole idea of being a brotherhood and being part of the underground.
like a metal brotherhood, like sharing
Absolutely.
some kind of ideas and mindset.
Yeah, and most of the releases that we put out are on small labels. They're not, you know, it's not coming out on, you know, Sony or what, you know, it's not a big label putting it out. A lot of it's DIY. A lot of the very early records, Jim and I put our own money in. We just said, well, we want to put it out. There's a label. Label doesn't have enough money, so Jim would put in $1,000. I'd put in $1,000. The label would put in $1,000, and we put it out. You know.
So very DIY mentality, like old punk.
And absolutely, and that's a big influence on Nonslaughter, was the early punk music as well. So. Do it yourself.
What inspires you these days? What kind of bands are you like getting vibes of?
Like newer bands, you mean?
Just any bands. Like what inspires you these days when you're like doing these songs? Are there certain bands or styles that this is the shit I'm gonna like put my mind into when I'm like?
Well, I'm stuck in the 80s. I mean, I can't get out of it.
Stagnation.
I am. Very stagnant, yes, you could say that. But I mean, those bands still influence me. The Slaughter, the Repulsion, Massacre, you know, Early Death. Those are still the same shit I listen to.
I think that's kind of a universal. I've talked to a lot of people, and I've noticed myself getting closer to 50 and all. Like, it's kind of a bound to happen. By the time you're like beyond 30s, we're kind of like getting stuck with the early ones, and it's kind of hard to rinse it off in a way.
Well, I think I look at it like at some point in the late 80s, I reached my saturation point of music that I could consume and absorb, and there's hundreds of bands since then that I've listened to and I like, but I don't absorb it. Could be that I just don't have the time, or I just don't have the capacity to continue to remember, like, oh, I got to go back and listen to that band. I just hit a saturation point, you know. I hit it pretty freaking early too.
I actually understand it very well. Now, talking about your inspiration, how does it go with the lyrics? What inspires you nowadays versus the early days? I mean, with the age, things change.
So it's the same shit, and this goes back to just the forefathers of death metal. So I would have to say it was late 80s, maybe 89, 90, and I read a Jeff Becerra interview, and he was talking about Possessed, and they asked him, you know, what, you know, what inspires your lyrics, you know, why? And it was best. I never fucking forget it. Jeff. As I read it, as I'm recalling it, he says, in this kind of music, you can sing about death or Satan. We choose to sing about both. And I was like, fuck, that's awesome,
like,
dude.
What else you really need?
I mean, I thought that. So I try to adhere as much as I can to that, even nowadays. But yeah, that was something that hit me hard. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, talking about Satan, this is always a peculiar topic, especially when I talk to a lot of black metal bands, but also some degree death metal and thrash metal. Satan seems to be very, very different from one person to another. Some call it more like real thing, like to some people like Jesus Christ and whatever. Some people it's more symbolic. Some people it's just, I don't know, kind of a something between these two. But what it is to you? When you say Satan on stage or lyrics?
So it just goes to, for me, it's about the stories and the concept of the ultimate evil. I think that's fucking brilliant. I believe in nothing, so it doesn't matter to me. I mean, it's the same as talking about a ham sandwich. I mean, it's just
ham sandwich, Satan, same lyrics.
I mean, it does. It's just whatever. But those are the topics that I like to read about. Yeah. And that influenced me to write songs about it as well. Being a young kid, because I had to go to church and all that shit, and the stories or the parts of the Bible that talked about Satan and evil deeds, those are the ones that interested me. And so once I didn't have to go to church anymore and I started the band, I was just like, that's what I'm going to write about, is evil shit.
So it's, in a way, kind of lots of nerdy shit.
Yeah, well, books are for nerds.
I mean, this is something we had a talk with Kamli a few months ago when they played in Finland. We talked about like old school games and fantasy books or horror stories and all that stuff.
Yeah, he's in deep.
Yeah. And then I noticed a lot of things have the similarity, whether it's about thrash metal, death metal, black metal, doom metal. There's Lovecraftian horror. There's of course Tolkien-inspired stuff, but it all comes down. It all boils down to something like whatever sparks your imagination. And it seems like this is something very universal. Doesn't matter where you go. People are like, yeah, I know what you're talking about. And that stuff. But has your taste for certain topics changed? Like, are there some movies or books or whatever that were really good as a kid, but nowadays, like, nah, not so much?
I think as a kid, I was really drawn into gore movies. Yeah. But as I got older, I don't really watch that many movies anymore. So I'm more into sci-fi, action drama. So it really doesn't. But I still remember all the movies from the '80s.
Of course.
And but yeah, I don't have any. I don't have anything else to say on that topic, actually.
So, is Nonslaughter nowadays more of a live or studio band? Which, if you had to put like gun on your temple of your head, live or studio?
I think we're better live. Although the studio material is actually really sounds a lot better than it used to. That has to do with that guy over there. It's his studio that we record in Cleveland. But I wish we were more often a live band, but just with us live, everybody's got family and jobs and work and shit they have to do back home, so we can't tour 6, 7, 8 months a year like I would like to play more often. But with the ability for us to go into the studio pretty much any time, it makes writing and recording much easier than it was in the old days, because we'd only have $100 to go to a buddy's studio, and he'd set up a few mics and it'd sound like shit. We just put it out anyway because that's all we had, But nowadays, it's much easier to record a good sounding record.
Yeah, technology has changed so much that nowadays basically all you need a couple of mics and maybe some computer and stuff like that. And it has also paved the way for so many shitty bands that are like, hey, I started a band a week ago, here's my first album, I'm gonna download it on Bandcamp or whatever. And so I think this is kind of a good thing and a bad thing at the same time.
Yes, I agree.
But how do you see technology changing what you do?
Well, I'm out of the tech game. I just let other people figure that shit out. But it's
read that shit and call me when it's done.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly. I'm not like today we're playing, but I'm not gonna go up there and tell them where to put all the mics and this and that.
Like a little bit of the glasses, like, hey, can you fix that?
I don't want that microphone. I want this microphone. I don't know any of that shit. I let I just fall back on the people around me to figure it out. But back to like technology, the band started pre everybody having the internet, and so I think the biggest benefit is that everything is on the internet. Like
now it's
you can
easy to
download
spread
it.
the music and spread the love, so to say.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's everywhere.
Talking about a little bit more about live. You've seen many places, but which ones are, you have some certain memories, like that place, that fest was something really special I need to have experience again?
Well, Brutal Assault was pretty fucking good. I mean, there was a lot of people, you know, and huge stage. Obscene Extreme was another incredible experience, just because everybody was there to have fun, you know. We played, I can't remember how many years ago, but we actually got, Possessed was headlining the fest, and so it was a good mix of people that really wanted to see death metal, and then a lot of grind bands, you know, Dopey likes a lot of grind noise stuff. So it was a great mix. But as far as like countries, Singapore was fantastic. It was beautiful country, and we played a very small venue, but it didn't matter to the people that came out to see the show, and that was some place I'd like to go back to. And same with Japan. Played a couple of shows in Japan years ago.
Any particular place, country or city, whatever, that you would definitely, if you could choose like one place above all the others in the world, where would you play?
That we haven't played yet, you mean?
Up to you.
I don't know. I mean, Greenland seems pretty cool.
Yeah, that would be like a not so obvious place for a festival or something like.
Well, there are some in Reykjavik. There's Metal Fest there. We haven't been invited to them, but I know.
This is a good time. By the way.
Yeah. Hey. But I've known some bands that have played in Reykjavik. But boy, I don't know. I mean, Russia would be pretty kick-ass too. I mean,
especially this political climate.
Yeah, well, not now, but
in a few years.
In a few years, yeah. That was a friend of mine did a tour in Russia quite a few years ago, and that's a huge country, and you know, I'm unfamiliar with a lot of the metal scene there, but there's got to be metalheads. There's metalheads everywhere.
There are lots.
Yeah.
Now, going closer to wrapping things up, if there one thing you could change, like, I don't mean like big regrets, but instead of that, I should have done anything like that happened in the career of Nonslaughter.
The one thing that is always really stuck with me was back in, I think it was 80, maybe 90, maybe it was 89, 90. There's a label from Cleveland called Seraphic Decay Records, and I was in communication with Steve O'Bannon, and he wanted to put out the first Nunslaughter demo on Seraphic Decay, and we went back and forth, and we were going to do it. He actually, there's I think we're on a Seraphic Decay comp CD, and we're on a T-shirt, and we're on some flyers, and what it boiled down to was he asked for the album art or the 7-inch art, and I sent him a large piece that an artist of mine, friend, did. You know, it was, and he's like, well, and again, this is like 90, you know, and he's like, well, I can't use this piece of art; it's too big. You need to have it redrawn. And I'm like, well, that's the only piece of artwork I got. I already paid the guy. You didn't tell me a certain size. And I figured he could shrink it down, but again, this is all before people had Photoshop and shit at home. And so he ended up never putting out a Nunslaughter 7-inch, and and then it went on to be all the I guess scandal about Seraphic Decay and whatnot. And then there was actually just a book put out. I think a guy from the UK put it out about Seraphic Decay, and he's got a ton of the releases in there. And I sent him some stuff, and he contacted a bunch of people in Cleveland, and they scanned in all flyers and shit. But that would have to be one of the things that I was like, damn it, I should have just given him the right fucking size.
Yeah.
but
mistakes are made.
Mistakes are made, yeah.
Part of the charm. Now, since your vast discography, I know this is going to be a hard question, but if you could start with one release that the audience should now start with, figuring out what's Nonslaughter if they haven't done it so far.
Wow.
You can just
actually
pick one, go wild and pick one.
You mean like a split release?
Whatever. Just something that they should start with.
I think the split I'm probably specifically at this time most proud of is the Nunslaughter split with Blood from Germany. Back when Jim was still alive, we had always talked about, we were both big fans of Blood, and we had talked about doing a split with Blood. And through another friend of ours, his name's Danny, he was like, oh, they're friends of mine, I'll ask. And again, this was kind of pre-internet, so he'd write me and say, no, they're busy or they can't do it. And, and we were like, okay, we'll try. We gave it another 5 years, another 5 years, another 5 years. And so unfortunately, Jim ended up dying, and Nunslaughter and Blood were playing a fest together, and their dressing room was right next to us. And so I just went over, and we were familiar with each other, but I never met him in person. We sat down, and I just got along great with everybody. And I was just like, we never did that split, And they were like, you know what? We're going into the studio in like 2 months. We're gonna save some songs or write some extra songs, and we're gonna do this split. So we ended up doing a split LP with them. So I'm extremely proud of that one. That, and I also got to say, very proud of our split with Agathocles. That was a huge fan of the band. Used to write him back in the '80s, and all of a sudden I got a chance to do a split with Agathocles. So those are two that I'm very proud of.
Nice, that's good stories.
Yeah.
But now I'm letting you go. So this is my one of the favorite, not so smart, but still important questions. If you could give one word of wisdom to maybe the next generation of musicians, from your perspective and experience, what would you say?
I'd have to say just do it yourself. Don't worry about labels or if it's popular music. Just start a band. Doesn't matter if you can't play your instruments. Just start a band and do it yourself.
Those are very good words. So now you know a little bit more, I hope, from Nonslaughter. Check out their massive discography. Start with the ones he mentioned and enjoy them live whenever you have the possibility. If they don't put a smile on your face, maybe you're a ruined cause and fuck that shit. But this is Nonslaughter, this is Rauta, this is Steelfest 2023. See you again and stay metal. And that's a wrap.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now we'll make the quick official photos for the social media. Sure. So they will be used when this goes out.